I spent some time as a tour guide here at Stirling Castle, a job that I absolutely loved, by the way. And I was often asked a question: what's with all the unicorns? A normal enough question if you happen to be standing in the little girls department of Santa's workshop in December, somewhere between the North Pole and the rainbow. But a pretty weird question if you happen to be standing in a Scottish castle, right? Wrong. A Scottish castle is the best place to ask the unicorn question. As my ridiculous hairstyle suggests, we are in lockdown here in Scotland. I've not been able to get out for, several weeks now, or to get a haircut, like many others. So instead of making my usual videos, I'm going to sit here in Jabba the Shed and we'll tell some stories instead. As far as the unicorn question goes, we need to go right back to the very beginning, about 2,400 years ago, with a Greek guy called Ctesias. Ctesias was a clever bloke, but he still managed to get himself captured by the Persians, which is modern day Iran. He found himself working for the king of Persia, Artaxerxes II, as his physician, his doctor. But this allowed Ctesias to have access to the massive Persian libraries long before Alexander the Great burnt them to the ground in a bout of drunken vengefulness. And Ctesias, he just loved books. Books were his life. Books were his reason for breathing. He also wrote books too. And one of the little books that he had written, which has only partially survived, is a book called Indica, which is a book about the mysteries of India. One can never be too careful when dealing with very old and very rare books. Now, India is, it's a big country, but back then it was even larger, and it might as well have been an alien planet for all that we knew about the place. It's a vast, unexplored wilderness and jungle with the strangest of stuff going on in there. Ctesias had never been to India. You don't really write a book about a country that you've never been to, but there you go, that's what he did. Instead, he was relying on snippets of information that can be found in other books, and also tales that were being told to him, sometimes second-hand, from folk who had been through there. His little book describes the land and the plants and the peoples and the strange beasts that roam there. And I mean, many of the beasts you can recognise, like, oh yeah, that's a tiger he's describing. And he also introduced Western Europe to the talking parrot. But there is also, there's odd stuff, like the strange race of one-legged folk with a foot that was so big that it could be used as an umbrella. And another weird beast was described so pragmatically and was so wonderful that to this day it remains in popular culture the world over. Hunters working in the deep interior of India would share stories around their campfires of a rather strange creature that they had seen. These stories eventually they reached the ears of our Ctesias, who had no reason to disbelieve them, So he faithfully wrote about the strange creature in his little book. And the one-horned Indian ass was born, from which the unicorn myth exploded. A unicorn is halfway in size between a goat and a horse, with a long, straight horn coming right out of its head. But it was the creature's character that actually gained the most attention. It was ferocious around the males of its kind, yet terribly romantic around the ladies. And it had sort of a strange magical property in its horn. It was well known that a unicorn was extremely difficult to capture and impossible to tame. And it was because of this they realised that a unicorn, well, it can only ever be absolutely true to its own nature. And at a time where, well, very few people could read or write, so symbolism was widely used to tell stories, then the symbol of a unicorn was used in order to convey truth, honesty and integrity when telling stories through sculpture, paintings and of course other oral traditions. When the New Testament Bible was being chucked together between about 50 and 100 AD, which was about 1500 years before this version was first published. Well, back then it was no great leap for these early Christians to use what was already a rather widely known symbol of purity and strength of character when they were conveying messages about Jesus Christ. And Christians, well, they ran with this idea for about 1400 years. In fact, every time you see a unicorn in medieval artwork, Renaissance artwork, well, the chances are you are looking at an allegory of Jesus Christ. In fact, I think, though, in the original version of the New Testament, unicorns were mentioned a handful of times. All sign of them now, though, they are long gone. So what has this all got to do with Scotland?